Along the winding edge of the river, where the current moves with the patience of centuries, the day begins under a veil of pale morning mist. The air carries the scent of wet stone and river reeds, mingled with the faint sweetness of bread baking in clay ovens somewhere within the still slumbering streets. Small wooden boats, their hulls worn smooth from decades of docking, rock gently against the posts, each creak a quiet conversation with the water. Merchants in heavy wool cloaks move without hurry, their footsteps softened by the damp earth, their voices low and unhurried. Across the water, pale light begins to touch the tiled rooftops, making the glazed ceramics gleam faintly through the mist. Children linger near the edges, watching the ripples fan out from a heron lifting into the air. A potter, seated on a worn stool beside his shop, turns a wheel slowly with one foot, shaping a vessel whose form has been made the same way for generations. The scene holds no urgency, only the gentle assurance that each movement, each exchange, will find its rightful place before the day fades. In the distance, a bell chimes from the tower of a merchant's guild hall, its tone deep and mellow, folding itself into the rhythm of the river's sigh. As the sunlight deepens, the outlines of the ancient walls and weathered market arches grow clearer, and the river's surface mirrors the city's slow awakening. The pace is unbroken, as if time itself leans here to rest, letting the hours drift past like the steady current. One could walk this bank endlessly, watching the same simple rituals unfold, baskets filled, ropes tied, greetings exchanged, until the world becomes a collection of small, perfect moments carried downstream. In the soft gold of early evening, the river wears the last warmth of the sun like a silken shawl. The ancient quay, paved with uneven stones worn smooth under countless soles, glows faintly as the day exhales into night. Traders linger by their stalls, but their voices have softened to murmurs, bartering now less for profit than for friendship. Woolen tapestries sway lightly in the breeze, their patterns fading like old memories. Across the water, a row of poplars sways gently, their reflections trembling in the ripples stirred by a slow-moving barge laden with earthenware and dried figs. A fisherman sits cross-legged on the bank, his hands working a net with the kind of care born from years of repetition, each knot tied without haste, as if the river itself were watching. Somewhere behind the marketplace, the smell of spices drifts from a cook's hearth, cumin, coriander, and the faint smoke of olive wood. The distant laughter of children floats above the water, carried far into the narrowing channels where ducks settled for the night. Lanterns are being lit now, their glow catching the edges of copper vessels and polished wood, reflecting a quiet pride in the day's work done. The city breathes with a kind of steady patience, each inhabitant part of a larger unspoken rhythm. As darkness seeps in from the horizon, the river becomes a ribbon of ink, its surface catching the light of a single crescent moon. It is a place where the turning of time is marked not by urgency, but by the simple, enduring rituals that have always bound water to stone and stone to the slow heartbeat of its people. A light mist clings to the river in the pale blush of dawn, softening the contours of moored boats and distant towers. The first sounds to break the stillness are not loud. The creak of wood as a ferryman adjusts his ropes, the faint clatter of ceramic jars being arranged in a basket. From the upper streets, a slow procession of carts begins its descent, their wheels groaning over cobblestones as they carry sacks of grain, jars of honey, and folded cloth woven in the quiet upper villages. The traders move like figures in a painting, each gesture deliberate, every step rooted in an old familiarity with the day's path. At the edge of the quay, a woman kneels to rinse linen in the shallows, her hands pale against the green water, her movements echoing the motions of mothers and grandmothers before her. The river's breath is cool and damp, carrying with it the scent of moss from the shadowed arches beneath the bridge. In the guild courtyard nearby, an apprentice sweeps the flagstones with long, measured strokes, his broom bristling softly against the ground. Overhead, swallows cut swift arcs through the sky, their wings flashing briefly before vanishing into the mist. The city is not yet fully awake, but its pulse is steady, a weaving together of water's patience and stone's endurance. As the sun begins to dissolve the mist, the outlines of market awnings and narrow stairs emerge with gentle clarity. This is not a place that rushes toward its tasks. Here the day unfolds like a scroll slowly unrolled, revealing its details in time. One can walk beside the water for hours without feeling the need to arrive anywhere, the journey itself being the quiet reward. Beneath the shadow of ancient archways, the river hums with its low, unending song. The morning air is cool enough to bead dew upon the ropes and oar handles of the moored fishing boats. In the shallows, minnows flicker like shards of silver, scattering with the soft plunge of a heron's beak. The streets above are still wrapped in silence, save for the muted clang of a blacksmith beginning his work deep in a courtyard where ivy climbs the stone walls. Along the quay, traders open their shutters slowly, the wooden panels creaking as if to greet the day. Stalls begin to show their wares, pottery whose glazes catch the pale light, woven baskets that carry the faint scent of sun-dried reeds. Across the water, the silhouettes of warehouses rise, their walls weathered but strong, built in an age when the city's fortunes came and went with the river's tides. Here, a merchant pours steaming tea into small clay cups, the surface of the drink trembling with the vibration of distant cartwheels over stone. The first customers approach, their steps measured, their conversations quiet, more a sharing of company than a transaction. Beyond them, the river curves away into the morning haze, carrying with it the day's earliest barges and the hopes bound within them. As the sun begins to warm the stones underfoot, the scent of fresh bread drifts from a bakery tucked into a narrow lane. The air feels heavier now, richer, as if the river has drawn the whole city into its slow, steady embrace, promising that all things here will find their place in their own time. The river at dusk holds a mirror to the sky's fading amber, each ripple bending the light into something softer, dreamlike. Along the bank, the stones are warmed from the day, and the air carries the scent of sun-baked clay and dried herbs hanging in doorways. Merchants have drawn their goods closer now, sitting among bolts of fabric and carved boxes, speaking in low, unhurried tones. Children chase each other across the quay, their laughter bouncing off the walls and skipping across the water. Beyond them, an old fisherman pulls in his last catch, the net heavy with the shimmer of river fish, his movements slow, the rhythm learned from decades in the same place. The calls of swallows overhead mingle with the distant toll of the evening bell, marking the hour when the city begins to fold inward. In the shadowed arcades, lamps are lit, casting pools of gold that spill across the uneven stones. A woman emerges from a nearby alley, carrying a basket covered with linen, the faint aroma of baked apples trailing in her wake. On the far bank, the first of the night barges passes, its cargo hidden beneath canvas, the oars dipping in and out with a steady, meditative cadence. As darkness begins to touch the edges of the rooftops, the pace slows further, and the city seems to exhale. The river moves on, carrying with it the sounds and scents of the day, leaving behind only the glow of lanterns and the quiet comfort of knowing tomorrow will come much the same as today. A pale dawn drapes the riverbanks in silver light, the air damp and carrying the scent of wet stone and early bread rising in clay ovens. The market square, still half asleep, waits under the hush of morning mist, its stalls covered in cloth that moves slightly in the breeze. From the high street, the sound of hooves approaches, a single cart bringing barrels of olives and baskets of figs down to the water's edge. The driver hums an old tune, the notes bending to the rhythm of the cobblestones. At the quay, fishermen prepare their boats, speaking in quiet fragments, their breath forming small clouds in the cool air. Across the river, a monastery bell calls softly, each strike lingering in the mist before fading into silence. Near the steps leading into the water, a child releases a small paper boat, watching it drift until the current carries it beyond sight. The city stirs slowly, as if reluctant to break the spell of the river's patience. A scribe, seated at the corner of a shaded arcade, unfurls a scroll and begins to copy in careful, deliberate strokes, the scratching of his quill barely louder than the whisper of the wind. Sunlight touches the tiled roofs now, turning them to muted gold. Every movement feels deliberate, each sound softened, as if the city itself understands the worth of stillness before the full weight of the day arrives. This is a place where hours stretch long, and the river, eternal, unhurried, holds every moment in its slow embrace.
At the edge of the trading city, where the cobbled streets give way to worn wooden planks and weathered jetties, the river widens into a slow, glassy expanse. Dawn arrives quietly here, with a pale mist drifting above the water, softening the lines between earth and sky. A fisherman rows his flat-bottomed skiff toward the shallows, the oars dipping without a splash, each stroke sending concentric ripples across the mirrored surface. The scent of damp reed and fresh water mingles with faint wood smoke from the hearths awakening further inland. Along the banks, traders' stalls remain shuttered, their canopies tied back to keep the night's dew from weighing them down. A woman in a long, faded cloak kneels by the river, rinsing lengths of wool that catch the early light like threads of silver. The rhythmic swirl of her hands in the water is met by the distant creak of a pulley lifting crates onto a small barge, cargo destined for quiet villages downstream. Even the gulls seem unhurried this morning, gliding low over the river's surface before settling upon mooring posts to preen. Somewhere beyond the bend, an old stone bridge hums softly beneath the weight of wagon wheels, the sound dulled by moss-covered arches. Beneath it, the river's current threads its way past ancient stones and sunken timbers, carrying with it whispers of countless journeys and trades long faded. The air tastes faintly of silt and honeyed bread, for a baker has just opened his shutters to let the warm scent drift into the open. By the time the sun clears the tiled rooftops, the mist begins to lift, revealing reflections so clear they seem like portals into another time. The river flows on, unhurried, as if teaching the city the quiet art of patience.